Hello, everyone. Hi, everybody. We are up and running. Welcome to the Carpinteria Birdwatchers meeting for whatever today's date is, March 25th, 2021. Today's meeting, we will talk about a single species, the yellow-crowned night heron. We talked about one species in the last month's meeting, and that was fun, so I thought we'll keep doing that. That makes my job easier. It's a lot easier to make a presentation for one species than for a whole family. And also for this meeting, we have a very special guest. We have Bradley Hacker, who is present in the meeting. And I'm going to be talking to him about primarily about his bird photography before we get going on the yellow-crowned night herons. And I'm going to try and remember to leave enough time if you have questions for Bradley. Please feel free to chime in with those questions. Hello, Brody. I see you again have a meeting-specific background, which is awesome. We always appreciate the appropriate background bird. So I'm just gonna, well, I guess before I get started, any questions or outstanding issues? Any great birds anyone has seen? And we have a month between meetings now, so there's a lot of time to accumulate great birds.
I was at it was a bird refuge. I was at the bird refuge, and I saw a type of like sora or rail. I forget what it's called. I did something and I just forgot what it was actually called. I saw red-breasted merganser there.
Cool.
I saw a couple ruddy duck, and I believe I saw a couple northern shoveler too.
Excellent. Yeah, this is, we're getting towards the part of the year when the waterfowl are going to start leaving, and it's good to get a look at them now. And a sora or any rail is for me always very exciting. I really count myself lucky if I can see one of those.
There was one other thing that I forgot to mention was a swamp sparrow.
Did you see the swamp sparrow that's been there at the bird refuge? So
Yeah,
kind of tucked in the corner over there by the beach where the volleyball courts are.
Yeah. I actually saw it two separate times. Once I saw it in like all those reeds, like those like right. And once I also saw it on like the fence of a house. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a cool bird.
Well, I've seen because to be able to identify it by it has a really pretty song. That's how I usually distinguish them.
Wow. Well, that is very neat. Yeah, that's a bird.
I usually find them by swamps too, so that's also helpful.
Yeah, it's not, we don't have a lot of them around, so if you can find where there is one and go check it out, that's a very cool bird to see.
And unlike most sparrows, that most of the time when I've seen them, they are alone. There's only one.
Yeah, that's the only time I've ever seen them around here is just a single bird. That's kind of one of those things where, if you chase after the rarities, you see one of them, typically. And, sometimes takes a lot of effort. It's one of the things I was hoping to talk to Brad about. If we talk about, some rarity chasing, which is how I met him and came to run into him, was chasing rarities around Santa Barbara County. But, there's also the version of birding where you say, oh, I'm going to go where this bird is common, and then I can see lots of them. It becomes a much easier challenge if you're willing to transport yourself, which I also want to talk to Brad about. Okay, well, I want to get on to that, but is there any other really exciting finds anyone wants to talk about since the last meeting?
I think it's kind of exciting mildly. I was hiking past Upper Oso to 19 Oaks Campground, and I was really surprised to see a yellow-billed magpie there.
All the way up there, wow.
Yeah, and I checked Ebird, and that was the easternmost record.
Cool, that's very exciting. Yeah, I saw your list from up there, and I was like, wow, she's way up there. That takes some effort to get up in that area. So did you camp at Upper Oso and then you hike north from there?
It's an easy hike. It's about 1.5 miles, and it's not even steep. And yeah, you can park right at the trailhead.
Oh, well, maybe I should check it out because
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep on going. Oh, yeah, Nancy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just have a question. And I'm just wondering what folks' impressions are on what's going on with swallows this year. We have a cliff swallow colony, and I've been waiting and waiting for them to come back. And just the last couple of days, there's a few, but nothing like the numbers we had last year. Anybody else have any impressions or insights on? I guess I've been wondering if the big freeze took them out.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in with I myself have noticed them only really being around in numbers for the last day or two. So, I mean, people were reporting them, I think as of about a week ago, there were a few showing up. I think those are the early birds. So, you may still get a larger number of them coming through. I mean, that was interesting, the whole issue, right, with the big die-off of the aerial insectivores last year. Due to the sort of extreme weather event. So yeah, I don't know. Anyone else have cliff swallow data to report?
Yeah, I haven't been seeing many either. Most years I'll be like seeing like 50 of them up in the sky, and well, I'm not saying exactly 50. I don't count every single one, but I just estimate about. But I haven't seen any this year. They always make mud nests up in like right by where the roof meets the wall.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that in our meeting on swallows. So
Yeah,
they haven't
like
really shown
last
up
year.
yet.
No, they have not.
Well, that's something to keep an eye on.
At the bird refuge, I saw a couple swifts, some kind of swift just skimming off the water, drinking. Yeah, so
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Andrea, you have a hand up?
The swallows supposedly come to Capistrano on March 17th or 15th or something. And so they must be just coming now. I've seen a couple. I haven't been to the salt marsh. Has anybody seen the ones that always come to the salt marsh? I haven't been there this week.
Yeah, they
shaking
about
his head.
30 or 40.
Well, that's good.
Okay,
I've
so,
seen northern roughwing and tree swallows in the marsh, but I haven't seen cliff at all.
I've seen a couple of cliffs, not that many. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, my seat of the pants sense is, give them another week or two and maybe they'll show up. I mean, my hope would be that they're just late, they're not actually gone. So give them a chance, maybe they'll show up. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead then and move on. Just one thing to mention too, and you guys are all very good about this anyway, is ask you to keep yourself muted when you're not talking, which you all do very well. There's enough of us here that it is hard for me to see everybody. So especially once I start doing the screen share, waving at the screen won't always catch my attention because I may not see your thumbnail. So, feel free, we're pretty informal. Feel free to unmute and just, ask a question. You don't have to, do anything fancy. You can also, send a message in chat. Our co-hosts are Tom Beland and Laurel Luby and Jenny Slaughter. So if you want to send a chat message to one of them, you can alert them to something, and they're keeping an eye on the general chat. So you can also use that feature if you have a comment. See, there is a chat message. Yeah, so Nancy's saying last year the swallows arrived in force on March 12th, which, we're pretty well past that. So you think they would show up, but yeah, I'm not sure about just year to year, weather may be a factor, conditions on the wintering grounds. I just don't know, but I'm curious to see. Okay, well, I'm going to move on then and talk to our special guest, Brad Hecker. So thank you officially, Brad, for being part of the meeting. I'm going to do a brief introduction with your bio, and I think for that I will go ahead and share my screen. Because your bio is so extensive, I didn't want to try to summarize it. Let's see if I can do this.
Summarize it.
He's a professor of geology, a distinguished professor of geology at UCSB with a long track record of doing geological things. Most of which I am not, well, essentially all of which I am not going to be talking about because I don't know anything really about geology, for which I apologize. Okay, so I've done this correctly. You should be seeing Bradley R. Hacker's bio page from UCSB's website, summarizing some of his current and previous research. Very exciting stuff. I don't know, there's a certain point in my life as a younger person when the thought of someone doing research with lasers would have been very, very exciting. So I was excited to see that you're doing research with lasers. You get to zap rocks with lasers, I assume, and then you're analyzing the result of that to determine things about the rocks. I'm not really going to talk about that though, because we're going to talk about birds. So you have a page at Flickr, which, if this is working correctly, you can now see. This is your page at Flickr, and I've linked to these web pages in the description of the YouTube live stream for this meeting and in the blog post at carpwithoutcars.org for this meeting. So if you want to go check this out in more detail, you can do that. I think I'm actually going to go to your eBird profile page though to talk about your birding and your bird photography, because that gives me links to the checklists and I can get more metadata than I can looking at your Flickr page. Do you actually, my sense is that you're putting the Flickr page is only getting some of your bird photos that end up on eBird as well. Like anything that's on your Flickr page, I think is also visible in eBird. Is that true?
That's probably true. Yeah, I try to avoid putting the photos that are horrible on my Flickr page.
Yeah, this is something I actually wanted to talk to you about. So I have started taking bird photos in the last few years, and I am very much not a photographer. You have asserted to me in the field that you are not a photographer, but in your case, I think it means something different than it does in my case. I think I have more of a legitimate claim to non-photographer status than you do. But so like when I take bird photos, I'm almost always thinking more about, documentation than art. I would like to get a neat photo of the bird. And sometimes if I've got good light and the bird is close by and I think, oh, that would make a good photo, I will try to get that photo, even if the bird itself doesn't, otherwise really seem to be in need of documentation. But mostly I'm focusing, like if there's a rarity, I'm trying to get, an identifiable photo of the rarity. And I'm curious what your approach to photography is. I mean, are you taking, pretty pictures? Are you trying to take, identifiable pictures? What is your goal when you're photographing birds?
I think it runs the gamut from everything from just documenting the bird to at least getting a picture where the bird looks pretty good, or you can at least see all the details. I'm not an artist by any stretch of the word. And, most of my pictures are not pleasing to look at per se, but some of them, the bird details can be seen well. So I'm not one who's trying to set up a fancy looking picture.
Yeah, I think I would beg to differ a little bit. I think a lot of your photos are really cool to look at, but maybe I'm not,
But that's purely accidental. That's just what the bird is and where it is. I'm not.
Yeah. You're not setting yourself up specifically to get good bird photos.
No. In fact, the reason I took this picture with the orange behind it, which I think it makes it look nice, was I was with Wes Fritz, and Wes Fritz said, "Hey, take a picture with the orange behind it." Oh, okay. Why not?
Yeah. So this is a monk parakeet, right? From a trip to Arizona recently.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I find interesting to me personally. Like, I feel like I have a lot in common with you as a birder in that, I'm out there chasing rarities, and you certainly are out there chasing a lot of rarities. I take photos lately, I'm taking photos again to try and help me document what the bird looks like. And I'm trying to get, a well-lit profile shot. I'm basically trying to make a field guide illustration, that's my goal when I'm taking my photos. And you do a lot of that. I mean, you're certainly taking photos that I would aspire to take photos that nice. but then you're also very different for me in that I'm very much a homebody as a birder. Like I bird in Santa Barbara County almost exclusively. You know, I will get out of the county. When I have to be out of the county, I will bird other places. But really, I'm very focused on this county birding thing. And, you know, when I do happen to bird in other places, more often than not, if I'm looking through the eBird reports, I find your sightings there. Like you go everywhere. And I find that really interesting that, you know, you are out there. Like, again, if we look at your eBird map here, you have birds reported over most of the world, which is kind of exciting. Do you, and I've wondered about this before, do you like travel for your research? Are you traveling, you know, for geology and you're sort of opportunistically birding along the way? Or are you making trips specifically for birding and maybe, you know, might glance at some rocks while you're there, but it's really a birding trip?
Yeah, a lot of questions in there. Let's say that I basically worked a ridiculous number of hours and days and years only on earth science. And I traveled a lot. And I looked at birds just a teeny amount on some of those trips. So for example, I've seen maybe 10 species in China and 10 in Mongolia and, you know, 1 in Russia, that kind of thing. And mostly because it's so hard to get funding in an academic setting that you can't screw around. And if I had actually looked at birds while I was traveling, I would have been able to see quite a bit more. But I've gotten a lot more, I guess the word is serious or intense about it in the last couple of years and been traveling specifically to go look at birds. And then I've taken little mini vacations here and there with my wife while I was working.
I noticed that like you, when I was organizing the unfortunately canceled Christmas count this year, that, you know, I was in communication with you about where you were going to be birding in our count circle in Carpinteria, and that you know, at one point just said, look, I'm in Tanzania, I'm very busy, just put me somewhere interesting and I'll cover it, you know, I'll talk to you when I get back. So was that a traveling birding kind of trip as opposed to a geology kind of trip?
It was a bit of both, actually. Yeah, and because COVID was going on, I had to think very carefully about whether to go. And at that time, there was nobody dying, or very, very, very few people dying in Tanzania from COVID. So I went, and I'm still alive, obviously.
Yeah.
But since then, you know, they're being affected by it.
Yeah. I would imagine that it must have cut back. Again, when I go back and look at your bird photos, I'm seeing photos from, you know, England and South America and, you know, various places around the globe that I guess you're not really traveling to as much these days, but hopefully soon.
I'm sure we all hope that, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a question in the chat. Andrea was asking if you can share what kind of camera and lens you use.
Yeah, I am mostly, well, all of my equipment is Canon, but that's just because when I was younger, I bought a Canon camera. I don't think there's anything special about that. A lot of good people use Nikon or Olympus. The main lens that I use is a fixed 500 millimeter f4 prime lens. It weighs about 10 pounds. I think the list price on those lenses is like maybe $9,000 or something. So I don't have any children, so that's my replacement for children, is I have a good camera lens. And I have mostly taken pictures with the Canon 7D2 body, which is a crop sensor camera that gives you an extra 1.6 times magnification. And I often use a 1.4x teleconverter with that setup. And then about 4 or 5 months ago now, I bought a mirrorless camera, and I've been learning how to use that. That's the short answer.
And I'm curious, you know, when you're out there taking bird photos, and, you know, again, I'm very much a beginner compared to you with my camera use, but I'm curious, you know, what mode are you shooting in? Is this manual mode and you're adjusting everything, or are you using like aperture priority or shutter priority?
Okay. Yeah, I typically use I typically set the ISO to what I hope is going to work. And that depends a lot on the camera body. So in the 7D2, for example, above about 800, the noise becomes quite noticeable. The newer cameras, the noise, equivalent noise is more like 3200. And I use aperture priority because with a lens of that size, I'm always struggling to get enough light. So I usually have it completely open or completely open -1. Usually the lens has a little bit less aberration if it's stopped down a little bit. So I usually stop it down 1. And then I look at the shutter speed the camera is going to give me, and I decide whether it's fast enough, depending on how fast the bird is moving, that kind of thing. And if the shutter speed is too slow, then I run the ISO up. So if I'm at the beach, for example, I can usually shoot ISO 800 and get a shutter speed of somewhere between 500 and 5,000, depending on the age of the camera. If I'm in a rainforest, then I basically take the teleconverter off. I shoot sometimes at appallingly high ISO, and then I just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah. Which again, if you're trying to document something, a grainy photo that you can see clearly is much nicer than nothing, so it's worth accepting that, I would think. Yeah,
and a lot of rainforest birds, you get maybe 1 or 2 seconds to get the picture, and that's it. So you need to know how to compensate for the backlighting or the color of the bird and so forth. And I always shoot in spot mode, and I always use AI focus, so it's doing continuous focusing.
So you're not like getting into manual focusing, or like if it's in like
I
the
can't.
underbrush.
My eyes are too bad.
Yeah. So you're just taking what you can get with the camera
if
sensor.
I have to manual
lens.
focus, the results are usually not good. I just basically hold the shutter down and run the focus through what looks correct to me and hope that one of them is okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. I'm gratified to hear that I'm doing broadly the right thing, at least in the sense that you have pioneered, like, that's the path you're on, and so as I work at learning how to use my camera better, I can continue in the direction I'm going with some hope of one day achieving something like what you're doing, maybe with a significant investment in upgrading my equipment.
Yeah. I mean, I've really only used 2 camera bodies in a serious way to do bird photography, and they have advantages and disadvantages. And I can imagine that if you were to use a body that was not as good as those, it would be a lot more irritating. Because both of the camera bodies that I use have deficiencies. And if I had a body that had both deficiencies that were, the combination of both of those, I'd probably give up.
Yeah, well, again, at a significantly lower price point, I have experienced a version of that in my own bird photo taking. It was the frustration at the limitations of the camera I was previously using that led me to, upgrade to the camera I'm using now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certainly very happy to have that better camera. Yeah, I also find myself now, noticing things that, gosh, I really wish I had, something nicer that would not have the limitations of what I have now. But on the other hand, I also like not having to carry, however much weight you're out there carrying. When I see you in the field with your big lens, that seems like a lot to lug around. Yeah, a couple of things to think about are Canon, and I presume the other camera manufacturers also make a good 400 prime lens that I think has fluorite lenses that I've seen people using that I'm pretty sure is f4, maybe even 2.8. And that's pretty good. You're getting 80% of 500, and it's much lighter. I also sometimes use a 200, 400 zoom, but that's not the kind of thing really you can use in a situation where it's dark. And then Canon is now releasing some very inexpensive fixed f-stop prime zoom lenses for mirrorless cameras. So they have a couple of lenses. I think one's a 800 millimeter and the other one might be
1200 millimeter. I've forgotten now. They're both less than $1,000, I think, and they're fixed at f11, I think. But they can do some pretty impressive things, and they're very small.
And you would basically have to, what, use a really high ISO in a low light situation, or is it, I mean, what are you giving up if you go with, I mean, what do you not have, what do you not have if you get something that inexpensive, relatively inexpensive?
The depth of field is fixed. The amount of light that comes in the lens is smaller. If you are serious about purchasing something like this, there are YouTube videos you can look at where people have shown what they can do and what they can't do. And yeah, I would say that probably a reasonable price point and compromise is to get something like a good manufacturer's zoom lens. So the Canon 200-400, I think, is $2,000, and it weighs probably 3 pounds, 4 pounds.
Yeah, I could see that being an upgrade that I might look at some point in the future. Right now I'm using a Sony bridge camera, and it's, you know, it's relatively at the upper end of that range, but it's not, you know, the same kind of gear as you know, a dedicated, you know, lens and camera body.
Yeah, and I think something to appreciate that I didn't is the point of having the crop sensor. So many of the camera bodies use a full 1-inch sensor, and having a smaller sensor that the same light from the lens goes onto, it gives you automatic magnification. And for birds, we really want that almost all the time. And finally, maybe the last thing to say about lenses and so forth is that a lot of birds have kind of a trigger distance where if you get any closer, they fly. And I find that's around about 300 to 500 millimeters. If you have a 300 millimeter lens, the birds will often fly before you can get close enough. If you have a 500 millimeter lens, you have a considerably better chance of the bird staying put while you try to take its picture.
Interesting. There's a question from Nancy in the chat. She asked, do you use a monopod to study your big lens?
Sometimes. The advantage of the monopod, obviously, is it's a lot more stable, and it's also a lot less tiring. The disadvantages are that you have to lug it around, and if you encounter a bird that's above your head and you suddenly have to lift the whole thing, then it's really irritating because you've got this big stick wagging around the bottom of your camera, which is not great. And I sometimes use a real tripod, and I have a Wimberley head for that. In general, I tend not to use those, mostly because I don't do any setup photography. You know, I don't find a bird and then stand around and pester it for long periods of time. I like to kind of run and gun and get on to the next thing, mostly because I'm impatient.
Well, and if you're birding, that's kind of the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Like I assume, like I again, no understanding of what it's like to do field geology, but I assume like for geology, you're traveling to unusual places, maybe in a way that birders do, but the thing you're going after isn't going anywhere. So like, you know, you can go there and find it and it's there. You know, birds are sort of the opposite of that.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
And people can check your work.
Well, that's the point of photography, really, at least for me. You
yeah,
know,
sure. Absolutely.
With the birds,
that is certainly one point.
Yeah, my own education has definitely.
Yeah, exactly. I learned a tremendous amount from people telling me where I was wrong about something, which is common. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and, if I can, I'm going to click through to your view all screen on your eBird photos, and I'm going to switch this to from recently uploaded to best quality, so we can just look at some of your best photos, at least according to people giving ratings on eBird. I'd love to get the story behind some of these. So this is currently your top rated photo in eBird.
I had no idea.
Eurasian blue tit.
It's not particularly great, but.
So, okay, I have to ask you, because I've got you, you're my victim here. What is it about this photo that makes you say it's not great?
The tail's out of focus. I can see that much.
Yeah, but the eye is nice and sharp, which, my understanding of bird photos is that's sort of the goal.
Yeah, I could have done better. I mean, it could be better, for sure. Not bad. I mean, I agree, but it'd be nice if the tail were sharp.
So this was
Then
taken.
I'd give it a 5 rating, not I think it deserves a 4.
Okay. So yeah, this is interesting too. I definitely, when I started learning how to rate eBird photos and I started applying ratings to photos, I noticed that I want to rate your photos significantly higher than you want to rate your photos. Because I'd come across your photos when you'd first post them and there would be one rating that I assume was yours. And I'd be like, no, this is definitely better than a 2 or, whatever you had given it. Well, I mean, it's relative, right? Everybody's.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just think this is very cool. So this was from 4 years ago, so I'm not sure how well you remember, but this is in Norfolk, England. And looks like is this like a feeder or there's got some sort of seeds it's working on there?
Yeah, I don't remember anything about it.
Well, it's a gorgeous photo. I really, really like it.
Yeah. It helps that it's a great bird. So.
Well, isn't that always the thing, right? I mean, that's the bird.
Well, I'm actually quite proud of some of my photos of boring brown birds that are really hard to take pictures of or hard to find. So.
Yeah. So this one, I'm not sure if it was this photo, but it was this bird, I think, I actually saw was the eBird, homepage photo one day. It was like the one photo they put on the cover.
You told me that, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I know that guy. I saw that photo and said, wow, that's Brad's bird. So this is an Upland Sandpiper, a bird I have never seen. Again, if I traveled more, maybe I'd be in a better position to see this bird. But this was in Nebraska in 2019. Do you remember anything about this bird?
I do. Actually, I was with Wes Fritz again, and we started in Detroit, and then I think we eventually flew out of Denver. And there were a couple of warblers I didn't have any pictures of. So Connecticut, and I didn't have good Kirtland's warbler pictures, for example. I didn't have the uppity sandpiper here. I had only bad pictures from Texas. And then I was missing all the junco subspecies. So that trip was basically to do stuff like that.
Huh.
And that was the first time I'd been to North and South Dakota, which turns out are really great places to go in summer for what was in May to see birds breeding there. You can see chestnut-collared longspur and marbled godwit, things like that running around breeding. It's always great to see birds on the breeding ground.
Yeah, I imagine that would be very exciting. I mean, recently there was that report of the chestnut-collared longspurs up in the Cuyama Valley that I know you went with Nick Letheby and got some photos. And I think that photo is not going to come up in your top-rated photos, but I did want to ask you about that photo, so maybe I can find that photo too. And before we stop, because I wanted to ask you something about that.
Mm-hmm.
So this bird, I actually chased a rufous-capped warbler on my trip to Arizona I made last
probably
fall.
the same place.
Well, I did not find that bird. And I mean, this one, this was actually taken in Chiapas. So you went to where they're not a rarity, right? So they're an easier bird to see.
Yeah, I have also seen them in Hunter Canyon down in the South Huachucas, which is presumably where you went.
Yeah, I was a little bit north of there, but in that same area, I think. Yeah, a very gorgeous bird that, again,
it is.
Wanted to see and did not see. But this is a close second to seeing the bird, is seeing your photo of the bird. So here, again, a bird I wouldn't even know if it bit me, because again, I grew up looking at the North American Field Guide, but have never birded outside the U.S. So I'm curious, and when you go and you bird in a place, like, I feel at this point, like I really know the birds around here. And at least in terms of the North American birds, just from thumbing through the field guide, I've got a vague idea of all of those species, at least. When you go to other countries, do you basically know all the birds, or are you like really dependent on the field guide?
No, my brain is completely full of rocks and minerals and stuff like that. And when I try to stuff any bird stuff in it now, I can't. I'm either too stupid or too old or something. But so I basically start out from close to ground zero, and it just takes a while. So as you know, I also make cheat sheets of similar birds so that I have something to help myself with when I'm in the field trying to figure out what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And I usually
actually know. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably even saw this bird.
I have seen this individual bird, so it makes me happy to see it come up in your top-rated photos.
Yeah.
This is that that male, McGillivray's warbler that's up at the
Yeah.
Log Me In complex.
Yeah, that one looks like it's actually mostly in focus or close to focus anyway.
So this would have been a pretty challenging bird. Like my recollection of that bird was that it's mostly in the understory and it's very dim in there. Do I didn't even click through to see what the ISO was on this, but I'm curious if this was a challenging bird.
Probably not 800. It was pretty dark. It was probably, I don't know, 1600. I would have to look. I'm just absolutely guessing. And the one of the secrets to getting decent pictures is to take a lot of them. I usually take about 50 pictures.
When you say you take about 50 pictures, you say like in an outing or?
No, I mean of a bird.
Oh,
if
right.
I think I want a picture of this bird, I have found that if I think it's probably a good picture on the back of the camera, it's usually not. So if I have 50 that I think might be okay, usually one of them is all right.
Yeah, and even like I've found that I can't really tell if the focus is right or if it's a little off, and then it's fuzzy and it's I post a lot of fuzzy photos to Ebird just because that's what I have. But
yeah, right.
There's a question in the chat that I had overlooked. So Lori was asking what the weight is of your camera and lens setup, like the whole thing all together.
Yeah, most camera bodies are about 1.5 to 3 pounds. The one that I'm lugging around right now, I think is about 1.5. The lens is 10, and that might be with the teleconverter. So, it's 12, 13 pounds. I figure I can probably do this for another 10 years, and then I'll be too old and weak.
Then you could sit out in your feeder with a tripod and
seriously, it's just hard to do. My tendons and so forth are just at some point going to cause me to have to stop doing it.
It's a fun photo, an action photo of a
I
great
like this
cormorant.
picture. Yeah.
Can you tell me anything about the taking of it or what the circumstances were?
I think I was in England, and I remember being really bored or depressed because I couldn't see any decent birds to take pictures of. This lake was full of tufted ducks, as I recall, which of course we've seen plenty of here. So, and then I think it was raining even. And then fortunately this cormorant decided to do something interesting. And I happened to be taking a picture of it.
Yeah, that's quite a fish. Do you recall, did it actually swallow that fish? Is that even possible?
I don't recall.
That seems like a pretty ambitious cormorant there.
Yeah, it might have thought, oh, this is a bad idea, and let it go.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to find those chestnut colored longspur photos. So I'm going to go ahead and constrain your photos to just show me chestnut colored longspur. You've got some
how bad a
really,
picture can get.
You've got some really nice photos of it. I assume these are on the breeding grounds.
Yeah, those are from the Dakota potholes.
Yeah. It's just a really gorgeous bird.
It is, yeah. It's hard to take pictures of because of all that grass. This is in wintering ground.
Okay, sorry. Now I've gone to let me go back. So
yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that's wintering in eastern Arizona.
And a lovely effect with the bokeh, right? The out of focus background kind of really highlighting the bird.
Yeah.
Okay, so this photo I actually want to ask you about. I guess I'd have to zoom in to get it.
Yeah,
so this is when I zoom in on this photo, which one does, right? Because I want to see better what you've got.
Are you going to tell me it's not a chestnut colored longspur?
No, definitely not going to say that.
Okay,
Let me go find the other one of that same bird. Yeah, this one. Yeah, maybe not that. I guess the first one actually was the one I wanted. So if you zoom in on it, you can actually see that you've done either some sharpening of the bird or
for
some
sure
blurring of the background. So
yeah, probably both.
Yeah, so I'm curious what your process is. So, again, I'm a beginner. I'm out there and I've got the burst mode on the camera and I'm coming back with 3,000 photos from birding out there, and I'm still trying to figure out what's the workflow to, in a reasonable time, get me down to the 1 or 2 or 3 photos that I want, and then what are my options in terms of things I can do to that photo. So I'm very curious about workflow and post processing, anything like that you can share about your bird photo procedures.
Yeah, everybody has their own procedure, and mine isn't necessarily the best. And it takes what I find to be an absurd amount of time, but I know people who spend even more time. I basically go through and I just ruthlessly delete all the ones that are bad. And then I increase the magnification of all of them by a factor of 2, and I go do it again. And then I increase it by another factor of 2 and do it again. And so I kind of whittle it down to the few that I think are okay. And then I usually pick 1 or sometimes 2 to actually work on. And I use Photoshop, and probably you can do the same stuff in Lightroom, I don't know. I read the image in and I crop it down to the size that I want. And then I adjust all of the colors and tones and contrast and gain and all that kind of stuff for the whole image. And then I typically select either the bird or the background, and I sharpen the bird, and I try not to over sharpen it. And then I blur the background, sometimes progressively, keeping the area around the bird sharp and making it progressively more defocused going away from the bird. But it depends a lot on how annoying the photograph is for doing that kind of processing. And this is an example of one that would be very annoying because the background is the same color as the bird. So selecting that with the computer would be really tedious. And what's the point? Because the bird's already very distant and out of focus anyway. Whereas other birds, if it's like bird on a stick and the stick is totally different color, it's easy to do. Birds in the sky, you can do many, many of those pretty quickly.
Yeah, because you can isolate it easily. Just lasso the whole thing and select it.
Yeah. But I'd be happy to go into that in greater length at another time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was very helpful. Thank you. It gives me a lot to think about and work on. Again, I really appreciate you taking all this time. Does anyone else have any more questions for Brad before we throw him back and move on to yellow-crowned night-herons, which you are welcome to stay for and comment on? I mean, I'm interested in your insights on the night-herons.
Is it fun being able to travel around the world and to see all different kinds of birds?
I have not gone birding any place that I didn't enjoy. I have worked in many places I did not enjoy, and I've done some caving trips in places that I did not enjoy. But birding wise, I try to avoid those places. So yes, it is fun. I like it. Some people don't.
Yeah, because seeing all these different birds, like the King of Saxony,
well, that bird is off the rails. Yeah, that's a fantastic bird.
Yeah,
I mean,
isn't it on a certain island off of Africa or something, or South America?
It's off the north coast of Australia. It's New Guinea.
Oh, yeah.
Same continent, actually.
Is this one of the birds on the screen now? Oh, this one down here.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable bird. It has those 2 wires that come out of its head that have those funny, like machine cut looking feather bits. And one of them is pale blue and the other one I think is pinkish white. And unfortunately, it's not a great picture.
No, but just seeing that, I mean.
It's an outrageous bird. Yeah, I recommend New Guinea.
Yeah, that. And did you actually see it moving its wires around, like how they're sort of
yeah. Yep.
Wow, that's
it's
awesome.
alive. It was doing its business.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask, where else have you birded in Africa?
Seriously, I've been to Tanzania and Uganda and Rwanda, but I've also been to Botswana and Namibia.
Which ones really knocked your socks off?
Actually, compared to South America, African birds are, I don't know, a bit less flamboyant and a bit less diverse.
Really?
There's some really interesting birds there.
They say over 500.
I think anywhere you go there, you're going to find something interesting.
Oh, sure. I just thought, was there any particular place that you really, really thought they were great?
If I had only one of those places to go, I would probably go to Tanzania.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with a lot of these famous places is they're totally overrun by people.
Right.
And one of the great things about Rwanda, for example, is nobody goes to Rwanda if you're our age and you remember what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, because of that, the birds love people and they're not frightened by them. Whereas right across the border in Uganda, the birds are sick of seeing people and they flee.
Sure.
So kind of depends on where you're going.
How touristic it is.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead then and officially close the Bradley Hacker part of the meeting. But again, you are welcome to stay, Bradley, and thank you again.
My mom just called me. I think I should probably do that.
All right, well, I appreciate your
mind.
time, and I
Yeah.
will look for you out
Good to
in the
meet
field.
everyone. Hope to see you again.
Thanks. So long. Okay, well, I'm going to move on now to yellow-crowned night-herons. So we'll just go right back into screen sharing mode. And let's see if I can find the right place. Okay. So here is a yellow-crowned night-heron, which is a fun bird. We had a meeting, I think it was one of the last meetings we did for Carpinteria Birdwatchers before we shifted to online meetings about herons and egrets, ardeids, generally.
Yeah,
And so
we were doing like herons, egrets, and some other ones that we did were like gulls and shorebirds, I think.
Yeah, we've been through them all. So this one, there's a little overlap because we have talked about this species as part of that meeting. So I'm just going to dive in and just talk about this one species, really. It's a very fun bird. So here's its adult appearance on the left and its immature appearance on the right. And then if you study them, you'll see that there's some intermediate looks, right? It takes them several years to get to this adult appearance, and they will go through a phase where they kind of lose their spots and they get darker, and they'll start to have that white cheek patch emerging, but they won't have the full adult look yet. So you'll see them in between these two as well. They don't just look like this. And here's,
John,
yeah.
What age, I mean, how old would the bird be when it's going through that transition between
is this Amrita asking? I can't see you on the screen. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I confess I don't know the answer. So rather than give you a bad answer, I'm just going to have to say, I think it's at least a couple of years. I'm not sure if it's 2, 3, 4 years. Does someone know?
Well, I mean, there's so many of them over at the salt marsh, and you can sometimes see some that are kind of in between these two as far as their looks.
Yeah.
I just thought an immature was, I guess I thought it was younger than that. I didn't realize what would be the age range of an immature bird, approximately.
Yeah, so again, I will research that answer, and I'll put a follow-up on the blog post for this meeting. If anyone else wants to check their references, and I see Eve is pulling out a book there.
Yeah.
Yes, Eve, enlighten us.
I've got Stokes here, and Stokes says that they reach mature adult plumage in their 3rd year.
Okay.
So the picture on the right would be your 1st year bird.
Yeah.
Right, correct. Okay, good.
And I was gonna say, I'm used to seeing them basically have 3 looks. It sounds like that may roughly correspond to the 3 years, the first 3 years of life, right? That your 1st year bird on the right, your 3rd year and later bird on the left, and then there's a bird that they didn't bother to illustrate that's kind of halfway in between the two.
Right.
So this is its range map according to the All About Birds website, and this raises an interesting question because according to this range map, we don't have them. So what's going on with that? And that's what I'm going to talk about. The yellow-crowned night herons range, as of this range map, there was a population that kind of lives over here. There's a subspecies that's sort of in the eastern part of its range. And it's somewhat migratory. It expands its range in the breeding season up into the, much of the southeastern part of the US. And then there's this population on the west coast of Mexico, or the western part of Mexico, that is more sedentary, that doesn't move around as much. And so you look at this again and you think, why do we have them in Carpinteria? So we will look at that. So we're gonna look at that with eBird data. So here is an eBird map covering 1970 to 1980. And eBird did not exist 1970 to 1980, but people have gone and put in old records into eBird. So it's maybe not as complete coverage as you might want, but it's there, and it you can pull it up and look at it. So that's what I've done. And so in those 10 years, there were 3 locations in Southern California that had yellow-crowned night heron sightings. And I didn't bother drilling in to see how many sightings they had at these locations, but they were seen in Oceanside. This, I think, is probably, I didn't actually study this in detail, but this looks like maybe the San Joaquin Wildlife Refuge in Orange County and like Irvine. And this looks like maybe the Santa Clara River mouth in Ventura. They like estuaries, and we'll talk about, why do they hang out in estuaries? Why do they hang out in marshes like that? But those 3 locations over that decade. So yeah, they're not there as far as the range map goes, but they do occasionally show up there. Vagrant individuals would show up in Southern California during that decade. So here we go at the next decade, 1980 to 1990. And this is kind of interesting. So now there's a whole cluster of sightings down here in the San Diego area, in San Diego County. And it looks like a few locations, again, in that same part of Ventura County. So it seems like there's been an uptick. More of them are showing up during this decade, at least going based on the number of places they were reported, than in the previous decade. So it's an interesting trend. Now we'll go 5 years, 1990 to 1995. None in Ventura during that time, but some up here in LA. Didn't look in detail where those are, but again, sort of a continuing population down here in San Diego. And Eve, maybe you would know this better as a San Diego birder, but my sense is that at some point, they basically were documented to have started breeding, at least sometimes, in San Diego County. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that's true. We do have breeding pairs, I think down in the Tijuana River Valley, and also last year here in Del Mar.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so at some point, at least, at some point in the past few decades, they started breeding there. Like they're actually moving in. They're not just showing up as wanderers in the post-breeding dispersal that happen to fly north and hang out there for a while. They're actually setting up housekeeping there, which is kind of exciting. We have all this, there's a lot of gloom, around bird population declines and loss of territory, but here's a bird that's actually expanding its range into new territory. So that's nice to see. So here's the next 5 years. It seems like not a very good 5 years for yellow-crowned night herons, 1995 to 2000. In Southern California, there's just one location here. That's like one of those lagoons kind of north of La Jolla. And then a sighting here in the, south of the Salton Sea, but not so much. But then 2000 to 2005, they're back in action. They're showing up again in several locations in San Diego County and again up in Ventura County. And I'm going to go year by year now. So 2006, some sightings in San Diego. 2007, more sightings in San Diego, and then more sightings up here. And this is actually, I think, in Point Mugu. So this is like, if you make that trip down Highway 1 and you go through Malibu, that marsh that you pass, it's like the next really good estuary, good coastal salt marsh, south of the Carpinteria salt marsh is Point Mugu. And they started showing up there as of 2007. 2008, not there, but up north in Ventura again, and continuing San Diego. 2009, back in Point Mugu, and again in San Diego. So it's kind of like they established this beachhead in San Diego, and then they sometimes get up the coast closer to us and sometimes not. 2010, first time ever, yellow-crowned night heron showed up in Santa Barbara County. So this was our first county record, which Paul Lehman in Birds of Santa Barbara County describes as a relatively late record. Like I guess he was expecting them to show up earlier than that, and it took them a long time to get there. But they finally did in 2010. A single bird showed up along this creek out by the Bacara Resort, just west of Goleta. And a bunch of people went out there and saw it and left eBird records for it. 2011, no Santa Barbara sightings, but again, down there in Point Mugu and San Diego. 2012, 2013, 2014, and this year they're back in Santa Barbara County, and this is actually Carpinteria salt marsh. So this sighting here in 2014 is the first sighting in eBird of yellow-crowned night herons in Carpinteria. And then 2015, and you can see they're starting to like really set up housekeeping at this point. They're like, you know what, we like Southern California. We think we'll hang out here. 2016, 2017, and some sites come and go, but the Carpinteria salt marsh is the place in Santa Barbara County throughout the last several years to go see these birds. 2018, and now they're really spreading out. Now we've got them in multiple locations in Santa Barbara County and really spreading out along the coast. And I would have to think, I don't know the details, but this I think represents local breeding success. Like these colonizers who showed up and started breeding, they're doing something right because there's a lot of them, and they're now having to spread out and find new places for their offspring to go set up shop. So they're finding suitable habitat.
Unlike 2016, I think I saw one out in one of the islands.
Was there? Let me back up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2017 it was.
Oh yeah, San Clemente Island. There's a record. That's pretty exciting. So San Clemente Island is one of those places that's, it's basically owned and operated by the Navy, and they use it for like bombardment practice. They go out and shoot big guns at it from ships. But it also has birds, and apparently it had a yellow-crowned night heron. Thanks for pointing that out, Brody. I didn't even notice that when I was putting this together. So 2019, lots of them, and then the last year I did was 2020. Again, doing pretty well and actually getting up into San Luis Obispo County. So that's basically the recent history, and I think that explains why the range maps don't show it around here. It's because the range map was made, it takes a while to update the range maps. And maybe as of the next range map update, we'll get some purple. We'll get
some breeding down in San Diego and then some purple up in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, and they are actually, I'm pretty sure they're known to breed now at Point Mugu. I don't know about any breeding records north of there, but there are.
Oh, okay.
And eventually, if this trend continues, which hopefully it will.
They have all these babies here. Don't you think they're breeding up here too?
Well, one would think if they're not, they might soon. A breeding yellow-crowned night heron is something that I would think we could find, if we gave it enough effort. And hopefully they are, and hopefully we can find out about it without bothering them, because we want to not bother these birds, but yeah, maybe. Okay.
And maybe the waters are warming up too.
Yeah, I mean, there is certainly the possibility that this is in some way a climate change related thing. There was I don't know, if you go back and read the research on yellow-crowned night herons, there was a previous expansion, and I forget now when, I want to say it was like 1995-ish. There was a previous kind of push in the eastern part of their range where they seemed to expand and then they contracted. This is, this looks like another expansion out here. I'm not expert enough and don't want to really speculate about the whys of it, other than to say, yeah, something is leading them to move into this new area and be successful there. And whatever the combination of factors is, I'm a fan. I think it's a good thing that these birds are being successful. So in terms of when you can see them locally, and here I've gone to my usual Santa Barbara County histogram. And this again, now this is all data, all eBird data for all years. So you can kind of see, I gave you the black crowned night heron as well, because that's the one that's really going to be your identification challenge, right? The question, especially with the immature ones, is this a black crowned night heron or a yellow crowned night heron, is what you're going to have to figure out in the field. And as you can see, black crowned night heron is, much more likely a night heron to see in Santa Barbara County. The yellow crowned night herons are in fewer places, and probably smaller numbers. Although if you're in the right place, it seems like they're all over the place. But the thinner green boxes, says there's fewer eBird lists with them in it. And then if you look, basically these 2 weeks in April, the second and third week of April, historically there has never been any sightings in Santa Barbara County. So I'd have to think that we're getting to where we're going to fill in that part of the histogram. Like, I guess maybe they've, individuals in the past would come into Santa Barbara County, into like the Carpinteria Salt Marsh, but then maybe they return to where they were, bred and raised for the breeding times. I don't know. I'm just speculating. For whatever reason, though, they become harder to see in the period we're in right now at the end of March and on into the first part of April. So if you wanted a fun project, we'll talk about where you can see them if you don't already know Carpenteria, but it might be worth going to check them out over the next several weeks, and you could be the person responsible for filling in the green on in that chart. I don't know. It's the kind of thing that gets me excited. I don't know how much it gets anyone else excited, but I will probably be giving a little more attention than I otherwise would have over the next several weeks because of that white space in the graph. I really feel like that should be filled in. So let's look again. This is all time, wherever they've been seen in Santa Barbara County in any year in eBird. So you can kind of see, they have certain places they really like and pretty much nowhere else. Although there was this one bird a couple of years ago that showed up at the new Koyama waste treatment plant right by the 166 there. There's like a sewage pond there. You can pull off the road and look through the chain link fence at what's in there. And there was a very young yellow crowned night heron, like it looked like almost a juvenile. So, young bird, who knows, probably came from down here, I'm guessing somewhere, and it somehow ended up here. And they really like crabs. That is their preferred food. There are no crabs in the sewage pond up here in New Koyama. So I don't know what that bird was doing there. And hopefully it found a more conducive place to live. But there's just that one report. Otherwise, it's all like coastal estuaries is where it's been seen in Santa Barbara County.
I was just wondering, we should check down like in Australia, we should go from like 1990 to 2020 and see if they start disappearing there and see if they start coming up here instead.
I would certainly expect that those night herons are not, those individual populations, those very remote populations from our perspective are not coming up here. But yeah, I mean, eBird gives anyone access to that data. So, go check it out, Brody. See what you can find. That's kind of one of the great things about eBird is the data is all there and you can just play around with it and see what you can find. And you can ask different questions. So here was
as we were doing the Zoom, I was just thinking I should get my camera out and start taking some pictures of some house finch and get some pictures of some house finch and because for Christmas I got this new like $1,000 camera that my mom showed me some pictures that were taken of it with some birds, and there are, I forgot to turn my video back on. There are some hummingbird pictures where they're just like stopped and the hummingbirds are just like stopped. You can see their wings completely. And it's really cool. Yeah.
I encourage you to follow up on that and do that because I would love to see those photos. If you put them in eBird, I will be checking them out because I'm looking at all the eBird lists in Santa Barbara.
I still haven't been able to put in any pictures on my eBird, which I'm really mad about, but it's at least I can take pictures and maybe like just show you on my camera the next time that we're on. But yeah,
that would totally work too. And, you know, think, you know, I mean, in general, I think my own sense is that the things that are frustrating or hard are kind of the things where I learn the most. So, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're frustrated by it, but I encourage you to work on it and accomplish the surmounting of that frustration. So you
Yeah, sometimes tech can just be like yeah.
I think we all know what you mean there. Okay, so here we are looking at just the south coast. So I've zoomed in a little bit so you can kind of see where specifically these birds, these yellow-crowned night-herons, are showing up. Again, the red dots in Ebird are in the last 30 days when I did this, which was a couple days ago. And then the blue locations are just, you know, whenever. Down here in Carpinteria, we've got them. Up here, the place to see them in Santa Barbara these days is Goleta Beach Park. There's a, you know, you can pull in there and check out there's a specific place where there's these bushes along the channel right by the bridge as you enter the park. And if you go out there and look carefully, you can usually see some yellow-crowned night-herons in there. And then finally, here is, whoops, I went too far. Let's back up. Here is Carpinteria. So we're zoomed in now and you can kind of see the Ebird reports of yellow-crowned night-heron in Carpinteria. And we kind of get the benefit of some people not following the Ebird recommendations very closely. So in Ebird, the recommendation is if you're reporting something where there is a hot spot, like this is this red dot here, this is the Carpenteria Salt Marsh Nature Park hotspot. The recommended practice is to submit your list for that hotspot because that way it sort of consolidates all the lists. But you know, not everybody does that. People will put in a personal location wherever they happen to be when they enter the checklist. And it kind of gives us this sort of fun, like scatter plot of where the yellow-crowned night-herons have been reported. So those non-compliant users not using the hotspot are actually helping us out here. But you can see along the Ash Avenue side of the Carpenteria Salt Marsh Nature Park, very popular place to see yellow-crowned night-herons. I know from experience, and a lot of you probably know as well, along the Franklin Creek channel here, where this footbridge crosses the creek, excellent place to look for yellow-crowned night-herons. They really like hanging out along the banks of the Franklin Creek channel here, where they hunt for crabs. You can see them other places within the marsh. You know, I suspect this very tight clustering of sightings here is more about that being where the birders are than that being where the yellow-crowned night-herons are. Like I think I have seen yellow-crowned night-herons in this part of the marsh too, when going in there for bird surveys, but the access is restricted in this part of the marsh, so there's a lot fewer people in there. And when they do go in there, they're often using this hotspot, so you don't really get that nice cluster of stuff. But I think they're in many locations in the Carpenteria Salt Marsh, but this is the easiest place to access to go see them.
Yeah, I think the reason that there's so many in that spot was because a couple people saw them there and then everyone started going there, and so no one ever really went anywhere else. And
it is the place to go if you want to see these birds, is to go to the Salt Marsh Nature Park. Also, I had a few videos I wanted to show. So as I think I mentioned before, crabs are their favorite food. They really like to eat crabs. So here is a YouTube video of an immature yellow-crowned night-heron hunting a crab. So this is their hunting style. Right, they're sneaking up on the crab. So they have to move slowly enough that they don't startle the crab. And there's this interesting thing. See how it starts to do this kind of swaying? It's like it's swaying its body a little bit, its head and its neck and its body go back and forth. If you're a crab and a yellow-crowned night-heron starts swaying like that, you're in trouble. They do that as they're getting ready to actually strike. So I'm not sure what the point of it is. Maybe it's like helping them zero in and you know, figure out the diffraction of the water. I don't know what it is, but
I think the reason might be because it might look sort of like the reeds swaying above the water.
Yeah, whatever it is, they do it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, again, if you're a crab, probably time to get out of there. And you got a crab.
Wow.
And this really is their preferred prey. They really like crabs.
My
That's-
gosh, you swallowed that thing whole.
And he swallowed it whole. All right, so I've got another one here. So if you got
that's
excited about it swallowing that one whole, boy, are you going to like this video. So this one that comes with a little bit of a content warning. This is kind of a brutal video. So I, apologize, Brody.
Brutal.
Yeah. It sounds like you're okay with that. Hopefully your folks are okay with that. But this is, again, not a good day for this crab. So here's an adult yellow-crowned night heron.
Yeah. Oh, swaying.
Yes, the sway.
The death sway. Ooh, oh my gosh.
So that's quite a crab. So I think this is interesting. Like, it gets it away from the water, right? It doesn't want to lose it.
Yeah, so that I can't get back in and get away. Oh my gosh.
And then this part, I've seen them do this. This is, they basically want to remove the legs. So this is the part I would say is kind of gruesome. Any crabs in the audience can turn away at this point. This is not pretty. That basically it is going to remove it, and then it's going to kind of peck it to deliver the coup de
Have its
grace.
heart.
And then it's going to swallow it, which
Oh my
in
god.
this case takes some work.
Oh, it's getting out. It's just
Multiple
like half.
attempts, repositioning. Yeah, I don't think this crab is really going anywhere at this point. It's lost most of its legs. It's been pecked. It's
Like halfway down the throat, and it's still like it's right back out.
and supposedly I haven't seen this, but the yellow-crowned night herons will cast up pellets with the undigestible parts of the crab. So if
Oh,
you,
sort of like owls.
yeah, exactly. And there it
Oh,
goes.
wow.
It swallowed that crab. Okay, so I want to finish up by talking about identification. So again, the challenging identification is going to be between these two birds. So this is, we'll go and put labels on it. So this is a black-crowned night heron, first-year bird on the
Yeah.
left, and a yellow-crowned night heron, first-year bird on the right. And there's a few different things I want to bring to your attention, and your field guide will point these things out. But the first thing I always look for is the beak. And
Yeah, the yellow-crowned night heron seems to sort of have like a thicker bill. I'm not sure if that's just like the picture or.
no, that is very much a real thing, and that is
Yeah.
the most reliable characteristic to look for. It's thicker. It tends to be darker. The bill does. You see this kind of lighter part of the bill of the black.
Yeah, it
Yellow-
seems like the yellow crowns, like the part of the beak that's closest to the eye is white, but on the black crown, it's like more the under part.
Yeah, and the
And
specifics.
that
of
could
the-
just be characteristics.
right.
that-
There's a lot of
that
individual variation, right? And sometimes there can be stuff on the beak that kind of makes it hard to see what the real color is. But that's a good thing to look for. If the beak is all dark, as opposed to having these lighter patches, that's a good indication of yellow-crowned night heron. And the structure is very helpful. Like if you learn to kind of key in on this kind of Jimmy Durante nose it's got going on, it's just a little more swollen, and it's really noticeable once you learn to look for it. Like this is just a sharper beak. Like it looks like if you had like if you
It's
poked
more like a dagger.
yeah, exactly. Like I feel like I could be poked with a yellow-crowned night heron's beak and it wouldn't hurt as much as a black-crowned night heron's beak. That looks sharper. That's significantly more painful to get poked by that beak. So some other things to look for, because it's always good to have more than one characteristic, is the spotting. So these light spots on the immature bird, on the yellow-crowned night heron, they're kind of larger and rounder. Whereas on the yellow-crowned night heron, it's got these little spots with lines. So the feather edges make these kind of thin, light lines that connect up with the smaller white spots. So this little spots with lines look is yellow-crowned night heron. This bigger, rounder spots without so much line action, that's your black-crowned night heron look. So that's something to look for too.
Is the yellow-crowned browner?
Yeah, my sense is that the yellow crowns tend to be sort of a darker brown, and the black crowns tend to be a lighter brown, more like, I'm not sure, again, I'm bad with color names. Maybe you know a specific name for this.
I'd
There
say
is-
that I'd say that the yellow crowns are a little more vivid, maybe, or it could just be because of the lighting in the photo. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I think, more contrasty maybe. And again, there's a lot of individual variation. And as they grow, they shift gradually to that adult appearance. So that's not going to be as reliable.
The beak
No,
is probably the most reliable thing.
The beak is the first thing I look at. And I've always said this, plumage lies, but structure tells the truth. So focus on that beak structure, right? Because the feathers, they age and they wear and they fade but the beak should be the right shape, right?
Yeah.
Do you
And
know
then
how many years it takes for the black crowned night herons to develop their adult plumage?
I'm as ignorant about that as I was about the yellow crown that we talked about earlier. Eve is checking her Stokes guide. I would assume it's similar, like maybe 3 years or so.
It has a white line there already under its eye.
Oh yeah, here on the black crown night heron.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's significant.
Yeah, I don't know. I said it was a first-year bird, but I don't actually know what I'm talking about. It's
Its
immature.
legs are more colored than the.
Yeah.
I mean, these sort of look like the legs of the adult yellow crown.
So Eve, did you have something to report from your Stokes guide?
Yes, you're right. It says that the black crown night heron matures in 3 years like the yellow crown.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm wondering if this is a first year and this is a second year.
It could be. Yeah, I'm weak on this. The fine points. I'm kind of a lazy birder. I've said this before. I usually try pretty hard to make sure I've got the right species, but then whether I can sustain my interest beyond that point to like get to the level of subspecies or aging the bird, I'm not as good at that part.
Yeah, I'd say I am too. I'm gonna say getting the bird species is good enough.
Well, there's always new things to learn, and I don't want to say do as I say, not as I do, because I'm the same way. But there certainly are interesting things to learn at the subspecies level, or sexing the birds, or aging the birds. But yeah,
Knowing that there's 3 years is really important and neat to know.
Yeah, that is helpful.
Yeah, like just like the dark-eyed junco, they have so many subspecies. I most of the time call them Oregon juncos by mistake because we have the Oregon morph mostly here. So I just end up calling them Oregon juncos.
Yeah.
Then after a second, I'm just like, oh, they're called dark-eyed juncos, not Oregon juncos.
Yeah, and for a lot of us, who learned our birds back in the days when Oregon junco was the species designation, we have to work against that too. Like our innate training is like, oh, it's an Oregon junco. No, wait, it's a dark-eyed junco. There is one more structural difference that can be really useful that I want to point out, just because again, it's good to have multiple lines of evidence, right? If you have more than one thing you're looking for, then when you get a tricky ID, you can look for all of them, and if they all line up the right way, you feel a lot more confident. Or if they all, two of them are pushing in one direction and only one pushes the other, that kind of helps maybe.
I'm sort of thinking that the one that you're going to mention is the yellow crowned has a longer leg, maybe.
You are exactly right, Brody. That is exactly the thing I was going to mention. So
you're not going to say that yellow crowns only have one leg, and then when they get two.
Yeah, you always have to watch out for that. Are you talking about the photo has a difference, or the actual bird has it? The actual, population of birds has a difference. So
and Mr. Sibley says that the yellow crowned has a longer neck.
Ah, oh, good point. Yeah, so it's.
But they don't always have it extended, so that's sort of a hard thing. Unless they do
when they get their food.
It's true. If you see, like the black crowned night herons are pretty, stubby. When they extend their neck, it doesn't go all that far. Whereas with the yellow crown, it really does go out there. But the leg can be really helpful. And the way I look at it is, if you think about like if the bird's legs were held out straight, as it does when it's flying, with the black crowned night heron, the feet kind of overlap with the end of the tail. Right? So. But with the yellow crowned night heron, the feet are completely past the tail. They're completely, beyond the tail when it's in flight. And I have a photo later of a bird flying that it's part of the quiz. So I don't want to give away which of the two species. But you can look for that. Okay.
I love the quizzes.
All right. So with that said, I think any more questions before we go on to the quiz? Any comments? Hopefully you're all expert now. All right, well, we're going to go on to the quiz. So in this case, what I have done is I tried to set up the polling feature in whatever we're using here, Zoom. How can I not remember the name of the thing that all of us have been living in for the last year? Zoom has a polling feature. I've set up a poll, and I am going to launch poll 1, which is the poll for this image. So this is an immature night heron. It is either, I will tell you, well, maybe I shouldn't tell you. No, I'll tell you. All of these images are going to be either a immature black-crowned night heron or a yellow-crowned night heron. And I'm going to launch this poll. So you now, if I've done this correctly, should have access to a poll in Zoom. And I haven't really tested this thoroughly, so I apologize if you don't.
Yeah, it just worked. It just popped up. I was just like, whoa, what's happening? And then I was just like, oh, he just said that. I was just like, why am I freaking out?
Okay, this is great. And I can see the poll results. It says 9 out of 12 people have voted. So I'll give you a few more seconds if you're still thinking. All right, and I will go ahead and end the poll and report the results. Now, can you see the results? No, I have to share the results. So I've now shared the results. So 9 out of 9 of those who responded to the poll think this is a yellow-crowned night heron. All right, so let's go ahead and see. Let me move that out of the way. There we go.
Yeah, because I think it was because I saw the white lines and it wasn't that big sort of circle-ish.
Yep. Yeah, this bird, and I tried to make the earlier quizzes are easier. I try to get harder as we go further, but this bird really shows these features well. You got the heavy beak, heavy dark beak.
You're such
You
a
got
good
a
teacher,
little.
Don.
What's that?
You're such a good teacher.
You
Your
got
class
the
got 100%.
My class got 100%. Well, I made an easy quiz for the first one. So, but yes, thank you. We're building on our successes. Little spots with lines, and you can't see the whole length because he's standing in, or she is standing in water, but you kind of see if you were to hinge those legs up, it looks like the feet would probably be past the tail. So this is in fact our yellow-crowned night heron. All right, on we go to quiz number 2. All right, and I will go ahead if I can and launch quiz number 2. All right, so you should now have access to this quiz. So which species is this? The results are coming in a little more slowly than last time. People are taking their time, which is fine. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds. All right, looks like 9 out of 12. I'm going to assume that's the same 9 of you. 9 of you, 3 of you are checked out. 3 of you have, like, you know, you've wandered off. You're 10 of you. Hey, excellent. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and see what the results show. And these results show that black-crowned night heron won, with 8 people guessing that that was this bird. 2 people thought yellow-crowned night heron, which is very cool and interesting. But in fact, the majority is right. The wisdom of our crowd is in evidence. This is black-crowned night heron.
This one's, all of the features show it right. The short, sort of stubbier legs, the pointed beak, which some people can mistake because it's sort of turned.
Yeah,
and
it makes it harder.
Yeah, and then the circle sort of wing pattern.
Yeah, and also a little bit of yellow on the beak. So again, if you're seeing this kind of thing going on, you should be thinking black-crowned night heron. In general. Okay, well, that was fun. All right, let us go on to quiz number 3. And there is a big hint in this one. Okay, and I need to launch that quiz. There we go. So the results are coming in fast and furious. Give you just a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end this poll. And I'm going to share the results. And in fact, the 8 of you who responded in time all thought this was a yellow-crowned night heron. And I'm sure this unfortunate crab agrees, because this is in fact a yellow crowned night heron. So
Yeah,
you
you
Go
can't
ahead,
really see the leg because it's sort of bent behind that reed.
Mhm.
You can't really tell the beak either because it's open up eating the crab. But instead of the beak, you can tell it's eating the crab. That gives you a hint of yellow crowned night heron, and it has the stripes on the wings.
Yeah, and this again reinforces why it's good to have multiple things you're looking for, because a particular view may not be good for some of those field marks,
Yeah.
but if you have multiple things, you can look for them.
Because in most chances, one of three will be there.
Yep, I agree.
With most things, like everything, at least one of three.
All right, we're going to move on to quiz number 4. All right, what do you guys think this bird is? These are all photos that I took, and in this case, I really thought that the middle toe, kind of the way it was bending over that railing, was really interesting. I'm like, wow, it's pretty wild looking. All right, a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And according to this poll, 9 of the respondents thought this was a yellow crowned night heron. 1 thought it was a black crowned night heron. It is, in fact, a yellow crowned night heron. I'm going to guess that the black crowned night heron response maybe was misled by this lighter part of the beak. This is interesting what's got going on here. So at the end of the beak, there's like some weird schmutz there. What I think that probably is the thing we talked about in our heron meeting. It could well be that it's grooming itself with powder down, that herons and egrets have these feathers on their breast and belly area that just basically disintegrate and turn into this powdery stuff that they apply to their feathers. So maybe that was what was going on here.
Yeah, and I actually got mistook by the beak for a second too. I mean, I think that's a characteristic differ because it's not as broad as I think it should. But the one thing that I could really tell was because of the stripes on the wing.
Yeah, and again, don't forget those legs. If you hinge these legs backwards, it really looks like those feet are going to be behind the tail. Right? It's got relatively long legs. And these things become more obvious as you go out there and really study the birds out there in the field, because you just check them out and with familiarity, it becomes relatively simple. It's like, meeting your friend walking down the street. You don't have to go, wait a second, is this Billy? He's got Billy's jacket. And it's like, no, you just recognize him like it's Billy.
These extra long toes are kind of interesting.
Yeah, I thought that too. I was like, wow, I didn't realize your toes were so long. But apparently if you stand
like
on a little
they
narrow
could get worms or something with them.
Yeah, you stand on a little narrow edge of a 2x4, your toes are going to hang over like that if you're a yellow crowned night heron. Oh, did I forget to share the results here? Yeah, I apologize. These were the shared results. So you can tell that I was not making it up. That is, in fact, the results that came in. Okay, moving on. Quiz number 5. As I said, it's getting harder here because I'm only showing you part of the bird now. Let's see. Must go to quiz number 5. There you go. Oh, I'm not fooling any of you. All right, I'm stopping this poll. It's too depressing that I can't fool you. Sharing the results. 9 out of 9 respondents call this a black crowned night heron, and they are correct because that is what it is. Right? You got that sharper beak with that yellow. Can't see the spots or the legs so well, but that beak really is enough to tell you that's a black crowned night heron. All right. On we go to quiz number 6. Launch the poll. What do we think this bird is? All right, you're very speedy. 9 responses are in. I'm ending the poll and sharing the results. All 9 of you correctly identified this as a black-crowned night heron. You know, and I thought I was going to get you because it sort of looks like it's got lines a little bit, but
Yeah, you almost got me. I was just like, am I right? Am I right? Because then after I answered the poll, I was just like, wait, if I bend those feet back, is that going to be longer? And I was actually like, it looks like it's going to be longer. What?
yeah, the feet do look kind of long, but no,
Yeah.
the beak is just, no yellow-crowned night heron, no self-respecting yellow-crowned night heron is going to have a beak like that. Their evolutionary history of specializing in crabs, I think, really has given them that very heavy, powerful, thick beak. It's just, if you're going to go up against crabs, you really want to have some good like pliers. You want to have something strong you can use to go after them.
I'm glad Brody put it well. He had a dagger beak.
Yeah, this is bird. It's more about like spearing fish and who knows what else.
Yeah.
A lot of different
Whereas
things.
the other one has a more dagger style beak.
All right, we're going to go on to quiz number 7.
Ooh.
As I said, I'm trying to make it harder for you. So see what we can get out of this one. I launched the poll. The results are coming in.
John, did you say what the black-crowned night herons like to eat?
I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned fish. I think they eat invertebrates, like wormy things, and I don't actually know. I didn't research my black-crowned night herons. I apologize.
Okay.
They are not crab specialists, at least. I'm not sure that they never eat crabs, but yellow-crowned night herons, crabs are their thing. I have never seen a yellow-crowned night heron eating anything other than a crab.
I've seen them eat fish.
They can eat fish, or you're saying black-crowned can eat fish?
Black-crowned I've seen eating fish.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. I feel somewhat happy that I was able to get one of you to say it was a black-crowned night heron, but no, in fact, the other 8 of you who said yellow-crowned night heron are correct. It is a yellow-crowned night heron.
I thought it was because I couldn't really see the beak that well, and I just barely got to see the stripes. So that's what I got. That's what set me to yellow-crowned.
Yeah, I guess I've been looking at these beaks a lot because to me, even though it's kind of turned towards the camera and you can't get the shape really well, that beak looks too fat, too swollen. Like the yellow-crowned night heron beak just looks, like it's, I don't know. It looks like that. It's that shape, whatever that shape is called. Okay, we'll stop sharing. We're getting towards the end. There are 10 questions in this quiz. So for this one, I'm giving you a bird in flight. This is quiz number 8. I'm launching the poll.
Oh gosh.
Look at it.
We're almost there. I realize I've gone long. I got excited talking to Brad about his photos. All right, maybe just a few more seconds. All right, I got 9 respondents. I'm calling that victory. And in the poll sharing the results, 9 out of 9 agree that this is a black-crowned night heron. And of course you are all correct. That is a black-crowned night heron beak. And the feet, kind of hard to see, but they do overlap with the tail a little bit. You can kind of see there. Hard to really see what's going on with the wing spots from this angle, but
Yeah, I sort of like saw that little sort of line of white, and I was just like, wait, isn't that the white-crowned night heron? I mean yellow-crowned night heron? But then I was just like, the feet and the beak match up with black-crowned, so that's what I.
And that line feature, that's really sort of an optical illusion because we're looking along the wing, right? So we see all those spots line up. The light lines on the yellow crown are feather edges, so they'd be going like this if we were seeing.
Okay. Yeah.
And another thing, I didn't emphasize it, but this is that sort of lighter brown that the black crowned night heron has, not the darker brown that the yellow crowned night heron has. Okay. We're in the home stretch. Quiz number 9.
Ooh.
what you can make of this bird. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Share the results. 9 out of 9 of you think this is a yellow-crowned night heron. You are all too expert. You know your immature night herons. Yes, this is in fact a yellow-crowned night heron. All right, stop sharing. Go on to the final quiz photo. Did my best to really challenge you with this one. See what you think. Really not giving you much to work with here. You know, I am impressed. I'm impressed with the results. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. 9 out of 10 of you think this is a yellow-crowned night heron, which in fact is what it is. Again, I took the photo that day, so I had other views of this bird that were not as much a silhouette.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously in this case, you've got kind of the long neck, long legs maybe to help you, but really it's that sort of swollen lower edge of the beak is kind of the main thing.
I saw one little hint of, if you look down at the wing, you can sort of see a little bit of the stripes.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. You can.
And that's what, instead of the legs, I couldn't really see them. So that's what got me to yellow-crowned.
And, these poll results were anonymous, so I don't want to call anybody out, but for whoever it was who guessed maybe this was a black-crowned night heron, this is a tough species pair. If you're just going by the silhouette, you really got to have looked at a lot of those beak shapes or that overall silhouette to get to the point of being able to call this bird based on just that silhouette. So keep looking at them, keep trying. You will certainly have many fun opportunities if you go to the right places to look for these birds. And that is, I think, it for the yellow-crowned night heron talk. Okay, let me see. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions in the chat. Any follow-up? Any questions about night herons or anything else we talked about?
No, it's time to go to bed.
It's time to go to bed. I agree. Those of us who get up before the crack of dawn to go birding, we have early bedtimes. It's just how it goes. You get up at 5 a.m. or earlier to be on site at sunrise. You've got to get your nap in. Okay, well, thank you all very much for showing up.
I was wondering if we could do just herons, just like herons in general.
Well, so we did previously do that topic, although not since we've been archiving them online, right? So this is not available for viewing. Yeah, I'll certainly give some thought to it. I'm trying to think, since we're a month from now, it's going to be late April. What might be exciting? I'll think about it. I want to try to be timely. Spring migration is going to be kind of really going on in full swing. Then I might want to talk about something a little more migrant specific.
Different. Yeah.
But yeah, I will certainly consider doing all of the herons again. They're a fun group. And, if people have other suggestions, just send them in via email.
Or one other one, maybe snowy egrets, cattle egrets, and great egrets. Those 3.
Yeah, egrets are good to sort out. We can get all of them. Cattle egrets a lot harder to get, but we do get them. And but yeah, those are good birds to know, and they're a lot of fun. Okay, well, thank you everybody very much. And I will see you all next month.
Okay, bye.